Welcome to A License to Thrive as a Business Leader. This is a food for thought, Linner and Learn evening style micro training. It's a conversational training. And I am Majesty AliNICOLE WOW, and I'm joined by Gina Gardiner. And we are excited to bring this level of training to you. And so the Linner concept, I just want to share about that. It's a play off of lunch and dinner, so it's somewhere in between. and this is about how people are used to having lunch and learns, but this is different. It's similar, but it's a Linner and Learn, type of experience here. And so, Gina, thank you for joining me during this time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so excited to talk about this because it really is time for business leaders to really start to thrive and to have what I call a thriver's license. And I established a work around this several years ago. But having a thriver's license, we hear a lot about driver's license and pilot license and being in the driver's seat and the pilot seat. But there comes a time where business leaders need to be in the thriving seat. And actually, that needs to be their place of really leading from that place consistently. And with you being the author of Thriving, Not Surviving, you know all about that, right?
I do indeed, and here it is.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And so this is a very, very important topic because, as we know, in business, it's never a straight line. It is certainly not a linear path to success. And it's often the roller coaster in terms of the ups and downs. And many business leaders for sure have experienced feast and famine. But there's a time to take all of what they've experienced and be able to really, I would say, leverage it as fuel and now position themselves to be only in a place of thriving. Your thoughts around that?
Well, I think we're living in a time where so many people are doing the very opposite of thriving, in fact, hardly surviving.
Right, right,
And
right.
so, in order to move from that place of barely surviving, you have to have a very different outlook. You have to do things differently. And I think that this is just a jumpstart to help people start to think differently in order to move forward and give themselves the very best platform from which to thrive.
Absolutely. And thriving, of course, will look and feel different, for everyone, even though we know what thriving means. And the general premise of it is going to be related to anyone who's looking to have the optimum type, of an experience. But when leaders can start to customize their unique framework for thriving, that's when they're going to be in their most authentic place. And with you, with the whole Genuinely You movement and empire, you know all too well how important authenticity is as it relates to showing up, because a lot of times that's why business leaders can't thrive, because they actually are not living, leading, and serving from their true authentic place.
I think that is so true. I think we've only got to look at leaders on the media, whether you're talking about political leaders or business leaders, and know that there's such a lack of integrity. There's such a lack of genuine heart to what's going on, that you'll find people will say what's expedient, what they think people want to hear, rather than the truth. And that requires compassion and it requires courage. And I think many leaders don't have the courage to stand up and say, these are my values, this is what I stand for, and this is how I am going to behave. And I think that when those leaders, or when leaders choose to lead in an enlightened way, that is with integrity, with compassion, with authenticity, with courage, that's when things shift into something very, very different and much more successful.
Absolutely, because at that juncture of one's experience is holistic success.
Yes.
Through the portal of authenticity, and not choosing to pave the way of profitability through popularity, leveraging a part of them that actually is not true. And when you can serve from your truest authentic place, that's where real thriving comes. You know, we hear a lot about being the best version of yourself, but a lot of times business leaders primarily get stuck in a success template that's already been created and not actually really customizing their own unique success template that's going to be in alignment. So looking at what does thriving mean for an individual, people have to be able to define what thriving means for them, even outside of the general context of what we know the term means. So Gina, you and I, we've published several works as it relates to the entrepreneur aspect, and I have several works as it relates to the high-end aspect, and you have several works as it relates to, you know, the business leader aspect on so many different levels. And is there, from your book, Thriving, Not Surviving, is there a principle that you feel would be great to have some food for thought around for the individuals that are listening, the business leaders listening to this?
Thriving, Not Surviving is all about doing the deep work on yourself, being the leader of your own life before you start to lead others. And it talks about your beliefs, your relationships, your attitudes to success and failure, how you manage change and transition, and then looking at what's your purpose and what makes you feel truly fulfilled. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is it didn't matter whether I was working with clients about their personal life or their professional life as leaders. These were the themes that every time we needed to look at and to closely examine the patterns of behavior, the patterns of thinking, the impact of those beliefs on how their relationships worked, for example. And so I wrote the book, and it is designed really as a foundation for leadership within your life, whatever the context.
So let's see that book again. Hold that up.
It's called Thriving, Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways of Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. And those 5 pathways are beliefs, relationships, your attitude and your focus around what does success mean for you, and do you focus on success or failure? Managing change and transition, and this pace of change has never been faster or more far-reaching than it is at the moment. And those who manage uncertainty well will thrive. Those who are really challenged by uncertainty will struggle. And then the last thing is that success in and of itself is not enough. So what is it that gives you true fulfillment? And I would suggest that that is fulfilling whatever your true purpose is in life. And for me, that's always around service to other people, service to the environment. It's about making a positive difference.
Right. And that is so vital. All of what you shared is vital. Thank you so much for being able to provide that, because again, going back to the holistic context of thriving, and I like what you said in terms of success is not enough. And that is true. And the thing about it is, because everyone also who deems themselves as successful is not necessarily holistically successful. There are business leaders that maybe are achieving a certain level of success, but it doesn't mean that they're thriving in their soul. It doesn't mean that they aren't, you know, having a lot of turmoil on other different levels and having to overwork to be able to sustain that success, quote unquote, model that they have. And so we cannot equate that to true thriving, right?
Absolutely. A number of clients that I've worked with have been highly successful business people, but their personal life is in tatters. Their relationships have failed because they're never there. They don't look after themselves health-wise, and so they get burnout, or they have, you know, really significant health problems. And ultimately, money and material things in and of themselves don't give you fulfillment. It's momentary, but it's never going to be enough. And so, you know, people that I've worked with who are highly successful, when you look at their bank account, recognizing that your bank account is not an indication of your wellness, your holistic thriving.
Right.
It's just one element of it. And if it's out of kilter, I give people a life wheel to look at different areas of their life. If you imagine a circle, and it would have money, relationships, spirituality, health, and so on. If you feel, and that's numbered 1 to 10, 10 out of 10 is it's wonderful, 1 out of 10 is it's dire. If you look at those spokes, if they're not even, then imagine that on a bike or a car, you'd get a very bumpy ride.
Right.
The issue here is having balance, is having a life where you are happy, and that you are contented with your life, and that you enjoy being who you are, that your health is good, that you aren't worrying about the bills, and that you have a sense of fulfillment because you are on track to fulfill your purpose in life. And those who do that have the most amazing quality of life. But if one of those things is out of kilter, then it can give you a very bumpy ride.
Absolutely. It's like a car that has a bad alignment, even if it has a new engine and brand new tires. If the alignment is not intact, so to speak, then you're right. It's going to be a very unpleasant experience of continual adjusting, right?
Yes.
And so this is why it's important in terms of being in the driver's seat, and again, not so much looking at the driver's seat and the pilot seat, which they all are in one seat, but the thriving aspect needs to be the chief leader or so of the vehicle, that business leaders are operating from. And so when we talk about having a thriver's license, that's you really giving yourself permission to thrive. And I think that what happens, Gina, is that people have not really given themselves permission to thrive. They've given themselves permission sometimes to succeed on a certain level, but not necessarily now a license. You think about it, when you're in business, you have a business license, right? Or certain things that you have a driver's license. There's license that you have to get for certain things. And so when you can stop having a thriver's permit, so to speak, and get an actual thriver's license, and now we're, it's a whole nother level of that. Your thoughts around that?
Well, I'd like to add another dimension, because I believe that if you're going to thrive as a business leader, then it's not just about you.
Right.
You thriving is going to happen when your team, your staff thrive, when your customers are thriving in terms of the service or the product that you give, that you provide for them. When those things happen, when you actually look at it in the whole, we talk about holistic leadership. When you lead by example, authentically, and that you create a win-win situation for your staff and for your client or customer base, then you're going to not only achieve high levels of success, including profitability, but that success is going to be maintained and built on. I think one of the problems with leaders, business leaders at the moment, and I understand why, is there's almost a tunnel vision that we've got to focus on profit. And in doing so, they very often create quite a toxic culture for themselves and for their staff. So that success, if they get it at all, is short-lived. It's not sustainable. And what we're talking about is thriving in the long term. Thriving is not a 1-minute thing. It is something that one needs to sustain over time, and it can't be at the expense of other people. If you're going to truly thrive, then it has to be that you're creating a win-win scenario.
Always, absolutely. And it is also the opportunity to be able to have both as it relates to, when I say both, meaning like everything that is the win-win. It is not the sacrifice of this for this. Yes, there are sacrifices, of course, that have to be made, but not, to the biggest detriment of an individual. And so again, going back to having your thriver's license and being able to be in that place of authority, and that's the place of leading from, is that you can have the success and the thriving. It doesn't have to be one, or the other. And I know, just from personal and professional experience, and I remember even years ago feeling like I had to make a choice between, certain things at certain times. And I knew for myself that if I'm having to choose this over this, where I really can have both, but if I don't feel I can have both, that means I am not in a place of thriving. Succeeding, yes, on certain levels. Thriving holistically, absolutely not. And so that was when I created the platform many years ago, as it relates to your driver's license, for business, so to speak, is that, but there's something I want to go back to, something that you said that was key, is about the sustainability. And see, when thriving is not a habitation and it's only a visitation, that's a problem. Oh, I know what that looks like. Trust me. When it's not where it's sustainable, but there are seasons of the thriving. Now, I will say this for business leaders: there will be seasons where you are in full bloom, and then there are seasons where, just like with a plant or gardening or however, sometimes things have to be pruned, and it can seem like there's a cutback because it's being pruned so that it can grow back, maybe even fuller than before. So you have to have the discernment in terms of when are some successes really dwindling away, so to speak, because it's more of a pruning, because there's something more wanting to come, and that you don't get limited by the level of thriving that you have been sustaining. So there is a significant shift sometimes that will occur. And I know exactly what this looks like in terms of when you're shifting gears for expansion. When you're shifting gears for expansion, that means that sometimes the thriving that was sustainable may dwindle down for a moment because there's something else queuing up. Gina, your thoughts around that?
They're talking in theoretical business terms of the curve of success, and that I believe it's the initial success is the easy bit. You succeed, but you need to, if you think about the curve, you have to start the next development before the crest of the curve.
Right.
Because if you don't, then the curve goes downwards.
Right.
So it's ultimately, before you get to the end, you have to start developing the next way of succeeding, and the next, because ultimately, if you keep doing what you're doing, you will stultify, you will stay stuck. This is always about evolution, isn't it? So if you're talking in gardening terms, you have to look at the design of your garden, and if there is a shrub or a tree that's taking over and taking the light from other things, you will cut that back and shape it, and it will thrive, and it will reflower, and so on. A business is a bit like that. You've got to keep an eye on the market and the changes that are going ahead. There's so many examples of organizations that were highly, highly successful. Look at the Fortune 500, for example, and look at the top 10 businesses. Most businesses only appear in the top 10 once. And then the next time that the list comes out, they're not gone down to 11 or 12. They've just disappeared from view.
Right.
Why? Because they have not chosen to keep the evolution going. They've stayed doing the same old, and as a result, their success has been short-lived. And so thriving is about adapting. It's about growing and evolving, and that requires you to know when it's time we need to move on, we need to do something different. And we need to let this go in order to make space for that difference. And that's part of being an enlightened leader.
Absolutely. That is the expanded context of enlightened leadership, for sure, as it relates to business leadership, for sure. So let's shift gears real quick, and I want to be able to showcase even several of your other publications as it relates to the business leader aspect, because, and this is important, is because who you listen to and what content you take in as a business leader is vital to your success. And so Gina we both have a plethora of works, but Gina
Me
has some
too.
present, has several of hers present for business leaders. So, and she's candid in some of them as well, and sometimes that's required. So Gina, would you like to show some of your business leadership publications?
Well, talking about being candid, I've
Yes,
been
yes, yes.
taking the bullshit out of leadership. I
Mm-hmm.
think so many leaders are BSing themselves in terms of what they're doing, blaming other people within the organization, blaming the market for what's going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And this shares with you some case studies and helps you to look at, are you really being honest with yourself? Are you taking radical responsibility for yourself and your team as a leader? And by doing so, helping yourself create the platform from which ongoing success is much easier than not. Then I've got a series of four leadership books, which start with emerging leadership. So, you know, very often people are appointed to be leaders because they're good salespeople or good technicians. And this is really for people who are either emerging as leaders or who recognize that their style of leadership needs to change. And so it's the enlightened leadership which is emerging rather than leadership, if you see what I mean.
Right.
That moves on, and the next three can be taken probably in any order. That's enlightened, authentic leadership. And being authentic is vital in terms of leadership. And that sometimes requires leaders to say, I don't have all the answers. Let's work together to find them out. Or, you know, this is really tricky and I'm struggling and I need your help. It is important for leaders to be authentic. Then we have enlightened, profitable leaders, and that's looking at the holistic profitability in much more detail than we've just been speaking about. And then enlightened, limitless leadership, and taking these things into a spiritual realm and being a conscious leader and connecting with your inner wisdom and with greater consciousness. Now, all of those are intentional journals. They've got an introduction, and then they have a 30-day opportunity for you to embed the principles which are shared at the beginning of the book to help you grow and develop as an enlightened leader. So that's one series. And then I have a whole series about profitability and leadership, because let's face it, I don't know a business leader who's in it not to be profitable.
Right.
And so there are a range of publications, again, same style, intentional journals. And we've done lots of training on how powerful an intentional journal can be. So there's enlightened, profitable leadership, the profitable, enlightened leader's journey, creating profits from the inside out. And that's really focusing on the fact that you are the key. The only thing that's going to limit your success in reality is you. And then journey into the new era of profitable, enlightened leadership, and soaring to new heights as an enlightened business leader, and soaring to new heights as a profitable business leader. And so they're all looking at slightly different aspects of profitability, all of them working on the basis of an intentional journal, helping you embed that. It's a self-study program, if you like. There are lots of other things available, courses and workshops and so on. But these are a great starting point because they're inexpensive. There's something that you can do very easily, just on a daily basis, to dip in and to give yourself the opportunity to really explore where you are at and how you can move things forward.
And this is the epitome of thriving, because again, it's about, you know, the holistic, you know, aspect, and being able to move into that place that really is within everyone as a business leader, is that there's like a thriving encoding. And once you crack open that encoding, then you start this more expansive journey that provides the evolution. And that's why the thriving continues to be an ongoing journey, and you'll find new levels of thrivability, if that's a word, you know, at each juncture. So Gina, there also are a few publications that I have, and I think that I would like to focus more on the higher end, aspect, is
Okay.
because we have to, as business leaders too, step into a more expansive, profitable space, because as you evolve, your missions evolve, and how you're showing up as well. So I believe you do have two of the millionaire. I know one for the transformational leader, and then just the millionaire one. Think that you have those.
So I've certainly got the new high-end
I-
empathic leaderpreneur
yes.
acceleration factor.
Okay. And that's
And
important. Go ahead.
absolutely. And then I've got the becoming a billionaire a blog tourpreneur.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And
Great.
then harnessing your empathic, profitable phoenixpreneur power.
Okay. All right. Okay. Great.
All
right.
Let me just see. Is there
It's
another one?
There's the millionaire monarchs.
Ah,
I believe that you have those. And the reason why I'm bringing these to the table is that leaders have to, again, allow themselves to be more expansive. And but I do like the fact that yes, so the millionaire metamorphosis factor, and being able to allow yourself to thrive on that level, to go through a unique process, so that you can be a consistent, thriving business leader, and be able to make those different shifts. And when you're in a metamorphosis consistently, you'll know how to start going from what was a caterpillar stage of thriving to now a more expansive stage, as a butterfly, and getting into what one of Gina's publications about soaring, being able to soar. And I know I have a publication, an empathic publication around the soaring aspect, as well. And Gina contributed, to that particular publication. And so having a more expansive vision. So Gina had put up a publication in terms of the billionaire blog tourpreneur and becoming one, and that's about cross-pollinating, yourself, and allowing yourself to be like a bee. And so sometimes we need to get into a thriving space so that we can create from these bigger profitable trajectories, right? And it's not that you end up becoming a billionaire, so to speak. You can, but you want to make sure, what's the saying, Gina, is that you want to aim higher, so that if you level out somewhere in the middle or so, it was better than if you just chose a mediocre goal. And
well, it's interesting. I was only talking this afternoon about when I was at primary school, the school motto is to reach for the stars.
Yes.
Reach for the stars, because if you don't quite get there, you might get to the moon, or at least to the top of the mountain. But if you only aim a little way, then the likelihood is you won't quite get there. And so it is about having high aspirations and really following those through. Follow your dream.
Absolutely. And it's about creating the experiences for yourself, because you can create millionaire and billionaire experiences without actually having the literal money, so to speak, and still actually have that type of experience and be able to do the things that you feel called, to do. Because, Gina, as we know, so many business leaders, they feel very confined and constricted around the finance aspect and the profitability. They don't feel they thrive consistently in that. And a lot of times it's because they're not looking holistically at resourcefulness and looking at uncommon ways to be resourceful. So sometimes when you create from these more expanded trajectories, then you have a better chance of your grid filling in for different opportunities to come, that actually maybe you don't pay for that, but you still get the experience. So there's a variety, of different ways, but it is time to thrive. And I believe that, each of us find ourselves at different junctures where we know that it's time to thrive on a completely different level than ever before. And if you can't create the meaningful, holistic profitability, then you can't really thrive, because that's going to stop you from being able to bring aboard the team that you need for the next level, or different things that you need to do to level up if that thriving aspect isn't there. So this, you know, Linner, Linner and Learn experience has been about providing food for thought for you as a business leader, some considerations, and really thinking about giving yourself that permission, getting your thriver's license, you know, today. And we consider that if you've listened to this and you've taken it in, that you've made a decision that it's thriver's license time. It's this, you know, it's you're in the driver's seat, the pilot's seat. You can drive and fly, but the thing about it is holistically, it's about thriving. Gina, your thoughts before we wrap up here.
I would say to you, this is the perfect time to expand your horizons, because if you don't, you're going to die on the vine. Those who have an open mind, who are ready to do things differently and to do that in a holistic way where everybody wins, they're the ones that are going to not only be successful, but become the leader of leaders. They're going to be at the forefront, the vanguard. And those people, generally speaking, do far better than those who come at the back of the crowd.
Absolutely. That was so magnificently stated. And I just want to say, of course, Gina, I want to thank you, you know, so much. I just want to also mention that within the description, you're going to find a robustness of offerings and opportunities that Gina and I both, you know, provide for you as a business leader to be able to take yourself to the next level of thriving and be able to do it in a very holistic way. And we both are here for you as it relates to the expansion, should you need something outside of the plethora of resources that that we provide. But there will be all that information in the publications that you've seen during this Linner and Learn experience. You'll have an opportunity to explore those two below. So Gina, I believe that we've definitely provided some food for thought, you know, during this Linner and Learn experience, and that as others have enjoyed their late lunches, they're in between lunch and dinner, and had this powerful food for thought, I believe that, yeah, they should go away full for sure. So do you have one wrap-up closing statement or so that you would like to provide before we close out here?
Just to say, if you are a leader, particularly if you're a business leader, you have the choice. You can carry on doing as you've done, or you can take this opportunity to take the best of what you've done and transport that into this new way of being, and give yourself the very best opportunity to unlock the potential that you have and your team has around you to create and sustain lasting, thriving success. So do reach out if you want some help. But I would say to you, don't hang about. Get started, otherwise you'll get left behind. And thanks very much for joining us.
Yes, you're absolutely right. She said it, get started, because you plant now, you're going to have your harvest later, right? But there's already a harvest that is before you. And if you look at it, you can see new ways to thrive. I mentioned earlier about it's no longer time for a visitation of thriving. It's time for the habitation of thriving. And it's Gina's, you know, magnificent publication, Thriving, Not Surviving, is that you don't want to be in a survival phase of thriving either, you know, because they both are synonymous, believe it or not. They're two different entities, so to speak, but you can be thriving and kind of struggling or to survive that thriving. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to keep taking it to the next level. And so that's why embodying of the habitation is vital. So again, check the description. We have plenty, you know, for you to explore, but we're wishing you all the best. And just know it is your time to thrive and have your thriver's license. So thanks again, Gina. And we are wishing everyone the absolute best. Take care.
Bye-bye.